What I'm going to try and teach you today is how the sound of a word changes because of the introduction of a vowel. Okay, is everyone ready to begin? It'll be great if all of you can get a pen and paper. All right, I hope each of you has a pen and paper. And now let's start. So, who wants to tell me how this first word is pronounced?
The first word is bit. The second word is
no. Just stay. This is the first word. The first word you're saying is bit, and that's correct. What happens if I add an e to the word? Is it bitty, or what is it? What does the word become if I add e towards the end of bit? B-I-T-E. Does it just simply become bitty, or what is it?
So it will be bite.
It'll be bite. Now, does everyone understand the difference in the pronunciation between the two words? If it's B-I-T, it's called bit, and if you add e, you cannot say bitty. That would be inappropriate. The appropriate way to say it is the way how Tanya said it, which is bite. Okay, who wants to go for the next one? The second word is cut. Now, as you all know, English sometimes can get really funny, right?
Yes, sir.
If you add e towards the end of cut, it doesn't become cutty, or does it? Does anyone say cutty?
No, sir.
That would be very funny, right?
Yes, sir.
So what is the appropriate way to say this?
It will be cute.
It'll be cute, exactly. All right. Okay. Similarly, if you look at the next word, it's called rip. R-I-P is rip, which means basically you're just ripping apart something. Maybe you're ripping or tearing a piece of paper or a cloth or something. But if you add an E, again, it doesn't become rippy. I don't think there's a word called rippy. The way it's pronounced and the correct way to do that would be ripe. And the meaning changes dramatically between each of these words if you add an E. Obviously, these are two different words. Bit is not the same as bite. Cut is not the same as cute, and rip is not the same as ripe. The word changes its meaning. What also happens is the pronunciation changes dramatically. And this is something that's not very obvious in the English language. How many of you are familiar with the Hindi language? Raise your hands if you understand the Hindi language very well. All right, so I presume others are not very familiar. You know, in the Hindi language, when you write something, you read it out just the way it's being said, right? If you write ha, then it's pronounced ha. If you write nahi, it's just pronounced nahi. And the same goes for all of the words. Whereas in English, that's not the case. The pronunciation changes dramatically depending on the word, and sometimes it's not very obvious what the pronunciation would be. So what do you do to understand what the pronunciation would be when you're confused? You can just simply take your phone or your laptop or any other device and just Google it. When you Google it, what do you do? When you Google, what do you get? You get a lot of different links. Some of those links have the meanings and the pronunciations. That's the easiest way to do it. Just look up the word on Google. You will get a lot of different links. Use anything that's authentic, either a Cambridge dictionary or an Oxford dictionary, and you will get the meanings of those words along with how they're pronounced in the phonetics. And what you interestingly also get is an audio clip which tells you how that word is pronounced. So it's as simple as that. And what I do as a practice is, because there are so many words in the English language and it's difficult to master each of those words. So as a practice, what I do is look up 3 words every day and just hear them out 3 times. Just hear how it's being pronounced. And when you do that, you just get better over time. All right. And as I mentioned here, for these 3 words, the meaning and the pronunciation of the word changes dramatically. Okay, let's move on. So I've got another 3 words here. So who wants to tell me how's the first word pronounced?
So the first word is cap.
It's cap, and that's correct. And what happens if you add an E towards the end? Does it become cappy?
No, sir, it becomes cape.
That's correct, it becomes cape. And the emphasis changes completely when you add the letter E towards the end of the word cap. It becomes cape, which is different from cap. All right, what about...
Sir, the last 3 words were for what we need to use them, like bit, cut, and rip.
Okay, let's go back. So bit is the past tense of bite, right? If I'm biting, for example, if I'm eating an apple and I take a bite out of it, it's a bite, right? But let's say you wanted to say it that you had an apple in the past, or maybe a snake bit someone, and you would use the word bit because that's the past tense of the word bite. All right, and cut is a very simple word. Cut is to chop something. For example, if you're chopping vegetables, then you would say I was cutting vegetables. In the in a different tense you would use it. So cut is to chop something, and rip is to tear something apart. Maybe rip a piece of paper. Go on. So Tim is a word. It's the name of a person. And what does it become when you add E towards the end of Tim? Anyone? All right, this is interesting. Time, that's correct. And you don't say Timmy, right? Timmy would just sound so terrible and awkward. Same for the next word. This word is hop. And what does it become when you add E?
Hope.
Hope. So again, how do you realize what is the correct pronunciation? So one thing I told you is you'll just Google the word and then you see how it's pronounced. And once you hear the word, then you will know how the word sounds and you will know how to pronounce it. What are other new ways to just discover new words? Anyone? Is there anyone in the class who uses a different method? Does anyone use an old school dictionary, like a proper book? Does anyone in the class use that?
Repeat the question.
Sorry? Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. The question is, how do you realize what is the correct sound of a word? Because sounds in English can be very confusing sometimes. Well, the most convenient answer is you just Google it. Or, when I was a kid, what I used to do, because there were no smartphones and the internet was not very common, I used to have a dictionary with me, and each time I came across a word which wasn't simple, look it up in the dictionary and see how the word is pronounced, right? Okay, let's move on. Last 2 words for this exercise, and then we'll do another exercise. Okay, who wants to go for these 2 words?
Plan, tube, tub.
Plan and tub, that's correct. Okay, and if you add an E, what does it become towards the end of each of
Plane,
these words?
tube.
And tube, correct. Now if you simply added E to plan, one might be tempted to say planny, right? But that would be incorrect. Okay, same goes for tub. If you add E to tub, does it become tubby? Tubby sounds very funny, right? But we don't call it tubby, we just call it tube. So it's very important that and it's not easy to guess what is the right pronunciation of a word, because like many of the other languages, English pronunciations are not very straightforward. And I'm going to show you one more exercise to help you understand that sometimes some words can be very confusing in English. Okay. All right. Okay, so who wants to tell me what the word on the bottom right is?
So for the first one, knowledge,
Okay,
the
all right, stay there with knowledge. Do we say it knowledge just because there is a K towards the beginning? Does anyone say knowledge?
no, sir.
Have you heard anyone in the class who's heard someone say knowledge?
No, sir.
Or have you heard anyone say knight? Okay, everyone says no, right? But if you just looked at the word and you had no idea whatsoever of how that word is pronounced, you might just say kno, but it's not kno, it's just no. Am I right? How many of you agree with me? Is it appropriate if I said kno? Or is it appropriate if I say no?
No.
No, okay. What about others? Does anyone say no in the class? Okay. All right. It seems like everyone says no. Similarly, when you have in any word starting with K, if you have an N following it, you don't pronounce the K. All right. This is a simple rule to remember. I've got another two examples. So if you look at knife, it's not knife, it's knife, because there's a K followed by N at the beginning of the word. So you just simply say knife, knit, knock. As simple as that. Okay. Some more examples of silent letters in some of the words. So who can tell me what is the first word? First word, it's psycho. So you don't pronounce the P. So again, similar to the previous page where I explained that if there is a K at the beginning of a word followed by N, then you do not pronounce the letter K. You just continue with the letter N. You just ignore the letter K when you pronounce it. And you just say knowledge, night, no. Similarly, we have a similar rule here. When a word starts with P in English and it's continued with S. All right. This doesn't apply to all the words, but with many of the words with a PS beginning. You don't say the letter, you don't pronounce the letter P. You just say psycho. So psycho is someone who's mentally unstable. Can someone take a try at the next word?
The second word is pneumonia.
Pneumonia. Now, please notice that the letter P is not pronounced in the word pneumonia. Does anyone say Pneumonia? Or wait, I would just sound very weird, right? You just say pneumonia. You don't say pneumonia. Psychology. So what you do is you combine the two words. So it's a combination of two words, right? Psycho plus logy. And psycho, if you just looked at the word individually, it means someone who has issues related to the mind, right? Who's mentally unstable or unsound. And logy is a Latin word which has Latin roots, and the word means study of something. And when you combine the two words, psycho and logy, you call it psychology. All right. You do not put stress or emphasis on the ending of the O in psycho. All right. Because if you just said psycho, it would be psycho, and logy is logy. If you combined, it would sound psychology. But what we do is when we combine these two words, you reduce the emphasis on the psycho, on the O towards the end of psycho, and you just call it psychology. And the P again in this word is silent again. Okay? Clear, everyone? Can we move on? Okay. All right. Interesting. Let's go. I've got three interesting words here where, again, you have silent letters, and these are some of the more tricky words to read out or pronounce. So who wants to go for these? Yes, Ishi, go ahead, please.
Yes. Receipt.
Receipt, that's correct. So what do you do with the letter P here? Do you pronounce P or not? No, you don't, right? So again, a simple question. How do you realize what letter not to pronounce? Well, there are no simple rules here in the English language. There are sometimes rules, but for a few specific words, there's absolutely no rule, and it can get very tricky because there are no rules to follow. So the first word, receipt, is pronounced as receipt. You don't pronounce the letter P there. You don't call it receipt. You just call it receipt. Can someone tell me what it means? What is receipt?
Receipt meaning
Yes. Okay, so I'll tell you what it means. So whenever you buy something,
Sir, when you pay for,
yeah, go ahead, please.
sir, when you pay something, then you get a receipt of it.
That's correct. We also call it a bill. When you buy something, you get a paper or a document which tells you that the transaction has happened. It tells you that you've paid. Let's say I go to a store and I buy a bottle of Coke. Let's say it's a 2-liter bottle of Coke worth 50 rupees. Most of the shopkeepers in India, they do not give you receipts, but what they are technically required to do is give you a paper which says that you bought a bottle of Coke and then you paid 50 rupees for it. So which is the proof that the transaction has happened. Now sometimes when you go to supermarkets, you might have seen computers printing out something which is written on like small pieces of paper, and we also call it a bill, and another word for bill is receipt. Okay, who wants to go for the next one? The second word here. Anyone?
Mortgage.
Okay, who is that? Sorry. Sorry, was that Ishi? Okay, Ishi. No, Ishi, it's not mortgage. Anyone else who wants to give it a try?
yes, that will be mortgage.
Mortgage, that's correct. The letter T here is silent. And Ishi, look, this is just how the English language is. Sometimes it's really awkward, sometimes it's funny. As I said, there are no rules to apply on which letters are silent. But in this specific word, the silent letter is T. You don't call it a mortgage, you just call it a mortgage. Can someone tell me what a mortgage means?
Money that you borrow in order to buy a house or flat.
That's correct. So when you go to a bank and let's say you want to buy a car, then you take a loan. When you want to buy a house, you might take a loan. So what does a loan mean? A loan is money that you borrow from someone because you don't have enough of it. For example, if I want to buy a house and the house is worth 50 lakhs, and if I don't have 50 lakhs, let's say I have only 10 lakhs, then I might go to a bank and borrow 40 lakhs from them for buying the house. So the loan that I take to buy a house or any property is called a mortgage. Okay, what about the next word? Anyone wants to give that a try?
So it will be debt.
It's debt, correct. The letter B is silent here. And what is debt? Anyone?
Sir, actually, in some words, some letters are silent, like walk, talk.
Yes.
So debt meaning debt is something usually money borrowed from another.
That's correct. When you borrow money, and we say this very specifically in relation to money, but you can generally use it for other things also. If you borrow money from someone and you owe them money, then you say that you are in debt because you owe the person or the bank or the institution money. All right. So again, in this word, there is no rule, and it's quite difficult to guess which would be the silent letter. So the simple way to do it is to just read some words every day, and the more you read every day, and the more you understand how those words are pronounced over a period of time, your pronunciation improves. It's as simple as that. All right, so I've got three very similar sounding words here, but they are very different in terms of the meanings. So can someone tell me how do you pronounce each of these words? I've got hints also written down on the right so that you know how these words are pronounced. Does anyone want to give it a try?
So may I?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Quit, quiet, and quiet.
Okay, yeah, that is bang on. That's perfect. And can you tell us what each of these words mean?
Quit, like sir, go game we quit. Quiet, it means to keep quiet, be silent.
That's correct.
And third and
Okay, let me just say about each of these words. So the first word is to stop something, stop doing something. For example, I might say, quit playing with your toys when you're studying. So that means stop playing with your toys when you're studying. Or I might also use it as, I quit my job, which means I left my job. I'm no longer doing it. So quit means to stop doing something. And the first syllable in quits has a sound very similar to KW, quit. All right. And the next one is to be silent. Be quiet. Be silent. And I've got a word here written next to it, which is diet. And the reason why I've written that here is because the second word, quiet, rhymes with diet. So quiet, diet. And the third one rhymes with this word sight, quiet. And what quiet means, it means very. When you want to emphasize on something, then you say the word, instead of very, you can use the word quiet. For example, Deepika Padukone is quite beautiful, which means what? It means she is very beautiful. All right. Does anyone want to give it a try in pronouncing each of these three words so that we know that you're doing it right? Anyone? Okay, maybe it's just best that you hear it again so that you know. First one is quit, then quiet, and then quiet. All right, let's move on to the next one.